Are we recording? All right, we're good. All right, so I wanted to begin first in oversight. Last week we have a new senator, Enrique, that joined us 2 weeks ago, and then Paul has also joined us this week. Neither have name tags because of a battle of wits that I lost in print and copy, but I hope to have your names enshrined at the table soon. So welcome both of you, and thank you for your service. Any comments on the minutes, or are we ready to approve them?
Move to approve?
Well, I would just say that on the minutes, it said that I had, not yes, not no.
Abstained?
That I had abstained, but I hadn't.
Okay. Make sure that
Did you vote in approval or
Yes.
Approval of the minutes.
Maybe my hand was flopping around, I don't know.
Any other notes of change? All right, so we have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
So moved.
I'll amend my
Yeah.
motion.
Oh, yes.
I'll
Because
second her.
Right.
I move to approve the minutes
Go to find what I
with
want.
changes.
And Charles, you have a name tag. You didn't use it.
Oh! It's sitting over there. It's like a ghost version of me.
We're a full service advisory council. All right, so we have a second. Any further discussion?
All the senators are.
All right, all those in favor of approving the minutes? Go up high. Okay.
It's multi-this course. So each time we bring a course, that goes into rate courses.
Charles messed you up.
So she's going to go and
Sorry.
this is what's going on. It's not anything this.
All those opposed to approving the minutes?
Is this yours?
Any abstentions?
To the lengths.
I don't know what they are. All right, Sue is not with us today because she's on vacation, and President Scott is not here for another reason.
I think she's in Klamath Falls.
Oh, so we're going directly to the advisory council report, Mary Ann.
So, our chair discussed with promotion and tenure to have better instructions for the FPAP and explain better why they're used and what they should be like, how detailed, etc. Because there are big discrepancies between, you know, the bare minimum and then the novels, and also it will be discussed whether there should be a sort of staggering, if only for the sake and benefit of the chairs and division directors. So that was one thing. Also, where did it go? Sue is in need of 2 people. She's on the tuition committee, and she's in need of 2 people to join the committee very quickly. They'd like to start meeting this week, so if anybody is inspired by that, do let us know. And then the president was talking about the PLC. See, that's why I was the one to say we don't get the. I'm sorry, I'm a little bit. I left the paper in the printer. So anyway, she will talk more about that. You know, about for lower division recreation of some sort. Thank you. Wait, no, I'm not done actually. I'm sorry, I'm confused but not done. Also, we still have no answer from DHEL or DHLE, or is this really being recorded? So we're still missing one person on that committee.
I think we're working on that.
You're working on that? Because at this point I was going to say, since it is in the bylaws that we have to have representation from every division, it's really up to us, to the Senate, to say, well, you know, we can just kind of overrun that for now, but if you're working on it, I'll wait.
Yeah, I think
next time
our
to say
last
that.
meeting, we made that offer to our faculty, not not this part of the division, but, and they
Big
still
stuff,
weigh in.
Yeah.
But I think we're gonna try to cover that.
Okay, great. But if in 2 weeks we still don't have anybody, they do need to meet, and so maybe at that point we decide whether we just, because I did get a second person from OCA who wanted to join, and so if in 2 weeks we haven't settled it, then maybe we can all agree. I don't know if we have to vote on that.
My recollection was there were 2 vacancies, one for me.
One was filled from OCA, and then one was needed from yours.
Which one was needed then?
Just anyone
Oh, you
from
mean
your
2 different
I mean, what
university
committee?
studies.
university studies, yeah.
Oh, I thought there was one for me you needed for assessment, maybe too?
I don't think that one required in the bylaws to have full representation. I could be
Oh.
wrong.
Okay. Thank you.
Ryan, do you want some?
I think it does, and I think, I just talked to my colleague, she says they're one short, I believe, on assessment committee, and I think they need one from each division represented.
Okay.
We'll check that.
Okay.
Or maybe it was either assessment or curriculum committee,
Curriculum was the one.
curriculum, university assessment.
Curriculum's good, and curriculum doesn't have to be representative of all the divisions.
Okay.
All right, we have with us Associate Provost Jody Waters, who, as you all should know, Jody responded to some questions from the Senate about the program tenure promotion guidelines and what had sort of happened with the delay in that process. Jody did provide a letter, a pretty extensive explanation of what happened, but she offered to come in today to answer any questions that you might have. So, Jody.
Do you have any questions? I don't think I have anything to add other than what I provided for you all in answer to Andrew's questions, but happy to answer any questions or clarify any part of it that folks would like to hear. I can reread that letter and talk about it.
Any questions or concerns for Jody about that process? And I have heard back from the faculty personnel committee that they expect to be wrapped up with that work by mid-November. And so we might even have those to look at by the end of the term here at Senate.
Yeah, I think, probably going forward, and I think that's the most important thing for me, other than just, feeling, it was not ideal that they took as long as they did. I don't know that we had a clear kind of workflow established. So I think moving forward, that's going to be one of the really good things that we can do is make sure we're all clear the sequence of events. These took place at a time when a lot of changes had happened because of the division directors, the administrative reorg, and that sort of thing. So I think it will be helpful to look back on this and to kind of learn from what didn't go ideally to make the next iteration of this pretty smooth.
You have a question?
Somebody can ask one.
All right. Well, then we'll move on to the next
Well,
thing.
let me just go back real quick and to confirm that academic assessment does also need someone from PDHL. So it's academic assessment and university studies, both of them need one.
Yeah,
Thanks.
All right, so the next item on our agenda is the student evaluation of teaching task force authorization. The proposal came forward last week, and so there's been 2 weeks, or two last session. So we've had 2 weeks. Any further discussion on that? Does anyone have any questions or concerns or thoughts about the proposal? Does anyone want to make a motion about the proposal?
I move this acceptance.
What's that?
I move it.
Yeah,
I move the
all right.
acceptance. Yeah.
Is that a second?
That one.
All right.
What are you moving exactly? Check it out.
Moving to authorize the formation of the, yes, the student evaluation of teaching task force.
As now defined.
Yes. That's not it. Mark, a second. Any further discussion?
Sure, 2 things. One, should we actually put a timeline onto this? It just says the term of this task force will just be at the end of this academic year. Do we want to have any concrete timeline was one from my constituents. The other one is the third bullet point, develop a proposal for new student evaluation procedures that are equitable and provide meaningful feedback to faculty. Some individuals thought perhaps removing that, just because we don't know if we will develop it, if the task force is there to research the idea of that. That could be something that comes out of that, but not necessarily something that we should, or change the language.
I guess I don't understand the bullet point part.
The bullet
Can you
point
describe
is
that
develop a proposal for new student evaluation procedures that are equitable and provide meaningful feedback to the faculty. The question that I got was, that may be a bit presumptuous until the task force actually meets.
Explore the idea of developing, something like that.
So you're, I guess my question would be, if the task force is not meant to develop a proposal, those questions seem diametrically opposed to me, because one is, should we give them a timeline, and two, should we take away a task? Which if otherwise you're just researching and they don't actually have to do anything?
Well, the first two is research proven best practices
Right.
and research the most effective use of student evaluation. So in that research, if that task force comes to light that says perhaps we should develop one, that was the only claim that was brought to my attention.
Oh,
So,
So you're saying one outcome might be we don't change?
That might be one of the outcomes.
But wouldn't that be a proposal, our proposal is we don't change?
what if,
If we adapted that way, sure.
what if it was like, you know, give a report on best practices or something like that then could be used for a proposal going forward, or it might say something different, but I think that your point that you want to have some kind of task that's an outcome, but I wouldn't say that doing the research is doing nothing.
No.
Like you kind of said.
Sorry.
That actually might be very labor intensive.
Yeah,
But but maybe depending on what they find, the proposal might be different.
Yeah.
Or,
although the whole point is bullet number 3, so if we're not at least hoping to have that happen, why bother?
Well, the argument that I received was that most of the people that responded to my email when I sent back would say, not most, but the few that did respond, because not everyone replies to to when I ask my division, does anybody have feedback? There's only a few that actually reply. And so the question became, this is a great idea, we should do it, but the argument was, the developing a proposal may be a bit presumptuous because we may not change. So they're ignorant on the best practices or what's out there. So it wasn't that they were against it, they just thought perhaps wanted to change. And if you make the argument that no change is the proposal, then I suppose that would be sufficient enough.
Well, we know we want to make some change.
I don't know.
And the preliminary research has shown that there are good changes happening elsewhere.
I even have a name, so if this gets approved and this becomes a task, I have somebody that wants to jump on it too, so.
Any other thoughts about that?
I don't know that we need to build into the language the possibility that one pathway forward might be, we've validated our own practices, they're good. I think that would be a proposal coming out of it, coming out of the research and proposal for maybe, what was the language of the second bullet again?
Second is research the most effective use of student evaluations and their appropriate role in the overall assessment of teaching quality, promotion, and tenure.
And then develop a proposal for new student evaluation procedures. So maybe in the third bullet then,
Strike
develop,
new.
yeah, just take the word new out. And that proposal might be maintain our current.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, that's good.
You think that would be,
I think they would be happy with that,
okay.
or at least less contentious.
So then, do you want to amend your proposal?
So I'm willing to amend my proposal to drop the word new out of the third
And that's
bullet.
it.
And Mark, do you
Yes.
concur with your second?
And that's it.
No further.
Any further discussion on that? All right, so all those in favor of authorizing the formation of the Student Evaluation of Teaching Task Force with the amended striking of new from bullet number 3, please show your hand. All right. All those opposed to the same motion, I don't want to say the whole thing over again. Please raise your hands. No opposed. And then I'm abstaining. Was anyone else abstaining? All right.
How do we fill it? Because Brian has a name and I've got a name from my department if somebody wants to do it.
Right, so my presumption would be that we would do that as advisory council, and so anyone who has faculty who are interested, you can send those names directly to me, and we could discuss them at the advisory council. Okay. Put together. So please do let me know. All right, great. Moving on to our next item, the proposal to change vice chair to chair-elect in the bylaws was introduced 2 weeks ago. So we could entertain a motion unless there is any further debate to be had about that. Does anybody want to make a motion regarding that bylaw? Oh, okay, we got one?
That we should amend the bylaw to say chair-elect.
Okay.
In 1.311.
All right, do you have a second? Any further discussion?
No. I guess I'm just a tiny bit concerned about how restrictive it might be for those who are on sabbatical, who would like to serve but can't because the following year they'll be on sabbatical. And it's already hard enough to get people to step up, so I'm just concerned that it might create more obstacles. But I'm not overly concerned. Just a little bit concerned.
Someone who's a year out from sabbatical could still be on advisory council.
Right, they could serve in other ways than being vice chair.
Yeah. Just putting it
So any other discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed? Any abstain? All right, our next item is the bylaw change to eliminate the language surrounding the FPAP. And I know we did have some discussion about this last week surrounding the other issue around FPAR being the deadlines. And I did want to let everyone know, I kind of snuck it in last minute into your Senate drive. At Advisory Council, we discussed this issue, and we really felt like this particular change to the bylaws was not about addressing the perfect possible world for our FPAR policy, but was the fact that we have bylaws that are inaccurate to how things are actually done now, and that new faculty coming in could be very confused by the existing bylaw language. But we did want to acknowledge the concerns that were brought up last week. So I did write a request to the Faculty Personnel Committee to address issues regarding both the deadline and review process and feedback loop for FPAR and the onboarding of new faculty to the FPAR process and the tools used to communicate how to complete an FPAR and why. And so that letter is in the drive for you to review. It's in the same section as the language for the bylaw revision. And so my hope is that we can sort of acknowledge that those are legitimate concerns, and we will come back to that. The Faculty Personnel Committee has responded that as soon as they are done with their work on those tenure and promotion guidelines, that they will take that up next and look into those issues for us and then report back to the Senate. So any other discussion around the bylaws revisions involving the elimination of FPAP?
So is this something that says when term by term faculty are being reviewed?
No, this has nothing to do with term by term.
Okay.
That's a separate matter that has not come up yet. All right, does anyone want to make a motion?
Let's change the language.
We have one motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
No? Okay. Just a second. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor of the bylaws revisions to 5.340 that involves the elimination of FPAP language, please raise your hands to indicate. All those opposed? Any abstentions? All right, we're just plowing through. All right, Lori and Charles, did you want to talk about the new revisions that have been uploaded to the Drive for consideration?
Want to lead? You want me to lead? So, two new revisions that were uploaded as a result of some of our previous discussion and made available for you here today for discussion with an eye toward a future vote. The first one has to do with the election of division senators and the role to be played by the faculty Senate Elections Committee. We did have some discussion in the last time we met or so about why we were thinking that that might be a necessary change. The second one is the bylaws amendments on temporary senator elections. And so we've put out three different things about what to do based upon the nature of the temporary replacement, how long, for example. And so we do have some proposed changes, some proposed language changes on both of these things for you. I'm more than happy, and I know that I speak for Lori as well. We're trying to work the will of the Senate here, so if you don't like any of this, it's not going to bother us. Just tell us what you think of this. So I appreciate the feedback. I know Cynthia's going to tell me something. She already has. But we have these out here for your consideration.
All right, any questions or feedback? Todd?
I think it's a great idea. Oh, yeah. It's already hard enough to get faculty to do stuff, and if you can get somebody to volunteer to take a 1 year or less Senate
One
vote,
term.
one term. Oh, yeah, that's even better, yeah. So I would even be favored of just even doing a year, but we won't go that far yet.
Would that mean like anybody could ask anybody on their faculty? Or would it go through like the chair, program chair, or something? That kind of like assent within the program?
Well, that's actually something that just occurred to me as well, that it might be worth specifying, for instance, that a large faculty senator could choose from anyone, but maybe a division faculty member should at least have to choose within that division.
Or be approved by the division, maybe the chair of the division or program. I mean, because division directors don't have a say about this actually, right? So it's really a faculty decision, not a division director's decision.
Right, so that, yeah, it doesn't, division directors aren't involved in choosing senators.
So Dennis, you're saying that you would like the faculty to like confirm it or something?
I guess I would like a little bit of oversight about that selection. And rather than say, you know, two people talking at lunch, hey, I'm going on sabbatical, do you want to replace me? And they say, yeah, okay, and it's all done deal. Whereas maybe that person that's being asked it's their first year at SOU, or, you know, they're not, you know, sure whether they're going to be here in the fall, I mean, that quarter. So like it has to be a little bit of oversight by at least a chair of somebody. You know,
I mean, we are talking about only one term,
Yep.
so 5 meetings or less.
It's same as far as I'm concerned. That's my record. That's my suggestion.
Okay.
We had a very hard time filling all these vacancies this term, which is why we wanted to simplify it.
I think the primary concern here was that this particular term, we had a number of one-term vacancies, and the amount of time it took to go through a process of one, recruiting people, two, running an election, and then finally getting the feedback. People are only now coming in on our third Senate meeting. So
When were we made aware that those vacancies were going to happen?
this term.
So I would ask, then Dennis, in your question about whether there should be some sort of other approval, those of you who served on the Senate before and for longer periods of time, have there been occasions when senators have been woefully ill-informed or it's impacted their other work in negative ways? I mean, would a one-term senator necessarily be miserable doing it, or have there been cases where that's been unfortunate, that someone has been sort of maybe railroaded into being on Senate and it hasn't gone well?
Yeah, and I don't look at it as a negative, being railroaded into it. I mean, it's more like if somebody wants to volunteer, that's great, that's the first step, right? But some senior faculty should be able to give an okay about it.
Well,
Rather- Rather than just some horse trading, between members.
Because there's a risk of,
Well, they're representing, the faculty of their program or division, some people would say it's a position of responsibility.
What about advisory council approval?
That could be fast.
Faculty do not have to get approval from their chair or division director to run for Senate. It's an election, but the one thing we're trying to get around is the time it takes to get nominations and then an election for a one-term appointment. Could advisory council?
I would agree to advisory council approval, because that would cover the at-large folks.
And on what basis would we, an advisory council, make that determination?
The same way, they're senior faculty or leadership, and people in leadership, they just have a little bit of, possible, I don't see that big a problem, but it could happen, if they're.
I'm just thinking it through, what would happen, I'm sorry, Maggie, go ahead.
Well, as somebody who's, has been here less than a year and all of a sudden is on Senate, it's a little bit overwhelming. I don't feel like I have much mentorship in the position. That doesn't mean I feel like I've been railroading and things are going wrong, but I do understand your concern, especially if you brought in a faculty member who it was, their first year at a university. So maybe it just comes down to, oh, it's your first year here at SOU, let's have an honest conversation about how Senate works, what's expected of you, and I think the advisory council can do that, but I think it'd really be up to you all to make sure you have that honest conversation with someone so they know what they're getting into.
All right, so I think I'm tracking all this stuff. You just want somebody to put a second set of eyes on
Yes.
this. Just as kind of a double check.
Yes.
See if there's anything that jumps out and grabs somebody who's got some background
Yes.
in all of this. The advisory council is actually kind of a nice choice because you can work the entire field.
I agree.
Like if someone has an overload or something and they don't realize that this is gonna be time consuming and, as you said, a big responsibility.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
I can read this stuff.
Any other suggestions or questions?
I think, Andrew, you brought up an interesting second question after Dennis's first one. Should, if you are asking someone to fill in for you while you're in sabbatical, should it be someone from your division?
At least for division senators.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
think
not that large.
it had, this is actually, by the way, it's been, even though it's not policy, this is the way it's mostly been being done, is people have been asking others to sub in for them. And I think generally speaking, they've been following that rule, they've been asking people from their own division if they're the division senators, so I think that would be.
yeah, we're basically writing down what's been happening. Because this is it was not in compliance, but it is what was happening.
And we did talk about in AC that this idea that Dennis is bringing up, that you name your own replacement, assuming it's all happened, but in my division, it's quite disparate different kinds of people. So if I'm replacing myself, should it be a business person or could it be an environmental studies person?
Could it be me?
Or could it be you? God knows. Do we care about that?
Well, he was just mentioning that it should be in the same division,
Right.
not necessarily in the same department.
But we could end up with an overload from the same department if we care about such.
Well, we could, I mean, but again, that's the way it is now.
Yeah.
That could happen with at-large, if all the
Sure.
at-large people are
Sure.
from one division.
Or even with the division, division can nominate, multiple senators from the same division, the same program.
Isn't it logical that the faculty talk about that at a faculty meeting? If somebody's gonna go on sabbatical and the faculty then all together communicate who's the replacement and then you have a check and balance. That's what we always do.
And for that kind of situation, you know early in advance, you don't know the quota of. I mean, those are special cases.
But we know who's gonna go on sabbatical next year,
Right,
so if it
right.
happens to be the Senate representative, then the 7 of us just talk about it at a meeting and say, okay, who can replace that one person? So everybody knows in our program who that is, so that's a check and balance.
I go back to the thing though about a faculty member can run for Senate without seeking approval from anybody,
So what's the difference?
But they're voted.
But they're voted.
Yeah.
I think that's the one reason why it does make sense to have some level of. a check.
Yeah, just, I still like the advisory council because I like, how flexible that could be and how quick a response could be in there as opposed to faculty meetings that come up every so often or not.
Ours are regular.
And I do think there's nothing keeping, right, the program, divisions or programs could have that sort of unofficial policy within their own realm and then send that person to advisory council. So that doesn't preclude you from doing exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, what happened to me is someone in math went on sabbatical, and I'm in computer science, and so I don't go to the math faculty meetings, so I had no idea. So I think when it is at the division level, the different programs don't necessarily communicate very well. And I agree that I think having the advisory council give that final CM since someone isn't being voted in. There may be many situations, if faculty is brand new, or we end up with all these people from one department, and you all continue to look at that, and it was speed up the process.
It is only for one term though, I think we have to make it clear that this is when it's only for, we're talking about a handful of meetings,
Just within
that's
time,
it.
only a handful of meetings.
Yeah, you can do it over again.
So some revised language about advisory council as a second set of bodies.
And do we want to add, ask them to add language about division, senators should come from that division?
Yeah, I think so.
So that those two changes and then we can put it back forward.
Yeah, I'll get back to you.
All right, next up we have Dale Vidmar from University Studies Committee.
So, as per our conversation, I think at the end of last year, we decided we would bring courses forward as we approve. And so 2 were approved at our first meeting, and then we had enough time to put a 3rd one in there. The first 2 that were approved were iStrand courses, Com 442, Global Communication and Social Change, and then BA 411, Sustainable Tourism. Those were both iStrand, and then the other one that came in later was an English 447, and that's Race in Britain, Literature After 1945. And in the catalog, that always appears as an English 447, Major Forces, but only this one counts. Like, not all English 447s would count for these. And that's just one of those idiosyncrasies that we have to face in our catalog with our university studies. But that's that would be another discussion.
That one's ice cream too?
That's J Strand. Sorry. And all of these courses basically passed with, kind of on a 5 to 0. And then there were abstentions from new members of the committee because we had a couple new members, 1 each week. So, but basically they were unanimously approved. And I think for the 447, there was 1 person who voted by email just in case we didn't have a quorum, which we did anyway.
Dale, in the case of the 447, you know, if a student's looking at DegreeWorks at like a list of courses they can take for a J-strand, what are the obstacles in place to keep the students from registering for the wrong one, thinking, oh, I'm gonna get my J-strand, and then find out later that they didn't?
You want to help me on that one?
Sure. So I worked with Mary Ann because there's more than one English 447 currently already in the lineup for I and J. So it's listed by title, and so when the student clicks on it, it'll navigate it for them. And it lists for them that is specific to the title. So we really tried to keep that very clear and upfront for students. We had this in theater over the years as well with some of the topics, things that have come through. DegreeWorks helps us navigate a little bit better, I believe, with helping students to end up on the right pathway. We have mentioned English that COM had the same instance with 460, and they were able to go in and do A, B, and C. And the background of DegreeWorks, it does that for them. That's how it navigates them, but it's just not transparent to the student. I would say that if we end up with some petitions down the road, which those do come to me, then we come back to Senate through curriculum committee and say, you know, we need to rethink this. But right now, it seems to be that folks seem to navigate it pretty well with the assistance of DegreeWorks.
Right. So the English program was not interested in going the ABC route?
When I spoke to Amarosa, she believes that the DegreeWorks is handling it for them without them having to do any additional steps to remember. If that isn't what Senate believes, we can certainly go back and have another conversation.
Any other questions? Of course, this is not up for vote today. Any questions right now? We have Neil with us.
You are talking about 3 courses, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, the ones that were in here.
Mm-hmm.
So they are in the team drive.
Yes, they are.
And just a
Good job.
reminder, much like last year, we have the University Studies Committee team drive for you as well. And whenever we put something forward to you, the full packet that we review is then uploaded as it comes to you. So it's full transparency. You can see those course proposals at any time.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
That was responding to you, I think, last year.
Well, I was wondering if it was
Just
going to carry
saying.
over, you know.
Yes.
A lot of people don't listen to anything I
Well,
And
I
how
went
many-
on sabbatical for one
The fact
term.
that it followed through was really great. I feel, you know,
Well,
The
validated,
privilege.
yeah, validated. We'll see if it continues.
Listen to, acknowledge, and validate. That's beautiful.
How are you populating this, the list of people who have access to that team drive?
We went to the Faculty Senate page
Okay.
and it looked at the senators that are listed. So, for
Make
instance,
sure that
Kimball's
you-
on sabbatical, so I don't know that you have access. But we could update that as well, or you could invite people. If you send me a list of anyone you'd want in there, just let me know.
Okay.
Much as you mentioned earlier, there are 500 plus people's names on the all faculty.
Mhm.
We didn't want to necessarily take that route, but it is fully available to senators.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, well, at this point, I'm going to symbolically hand over the gavel to Mary Ann, and I will no longer be presiding until Mary Ann says
Meeting
okay.
adjourned. So now we're going to discuss the new proposal, program proposal for digital cinema, which can be a BA or a BS. And if you have any questions for Andrew and his new hat, go ahead. There are other people who are also here to talk about it.
Yeah, talking about it. Also, did you pass around the sign-in sheet?
We started.
Okay. Just keep it rolling. Yeah, well, just give you a brief overview here. My first year in curriculum committee, and so I'm the chair. One thing, 6 years in Senate, I had no idea. I had hoped they were really thorough, but firsthand, I'm just so impressed with how thorough they look at these proposals before you get them. Like even enrollment services, they look at all the complications that these changes could bring up. Financial aid does the same thing. It's just, it would have been more comforting for me to have known all that before I was in Senate. But this is very impressive. You saw the size of this thing, but that's because of the thorough work they did on it. Working on it for 3 years. It's something that people have been wanting to do for a long time, but I don't think they're willing to invest the huge amount of time and talk that they've put into this. I love the way that they had advisory council put together to gather all the input beforehand, get all the information they need so they can move forward. Once again, with all that feedback, getting it more and more polished. What I think is really neat is that it's using a lot of what they already had, and it's not going to affect the loading much. So implementing this is not going to be expensive at all, and it's something that a lot of students are really interested in. Also neat that, boy, is it an affordable option if you consider to the large film schools. But any other questions? And it's over my head. Yes?
$90 per course as an additional fee, so this is.
Yeah, that was brought up
How
too
many
when we were
courses does
looking
a
at it.
student take in this major where they're gonna pay an extra $90 every time they take?
Well, you
a class?
gotta consider that they hardly had to buy any textbooks here, and they are being conscious, and it was in order to make the program feasible. So it's within reason.
So Mark, the $90 course fee is an up to. Doesn't mean that the course will automatically have $90. It means that there's that flexibility. And so the math we did on maintaining the equipment levels that we would need to have is based off of Brandon Givens from the Digital Media Centers here to sort of speak to this as well if necessary. We could, with a $50 course fee, on all production courses, if they were filled to 75% capacity, would meet the need. So basically what we've done there is create flexibility so that if, for instance, if we hit a time where we're in need, like a quick expansion and we need to buy some more gear, we could raise it a little bit. But most of the time we would keep it at a lower course fee, closer to the $50 range. Right now, our students in digital cinema tend to pay $75 a course for equipment fees. And those go towards maintaining and the current digital media center equipment and purchasing new gear as well.
And so, Mark,
But
was
if-
it how many of those classes?
I didn't get an answer.
The courses, I mean, the list of courses are there. Any production course, any course that the topic is
So they'll
production.
take 10. I'm making up a number, 10?
Let's look.
Like innovation and creative media, is that one?
That would not typically have a course fee.
So it doesn't matter. I'm just, if the program is not financially feasible on its own, why are we balancing the books on the back of the students?
It's not a program, it's the Digital Media Center, which is, again, students currently pay $75 in all these courses that currently exist. And I don't get complaints now from students.
Do they know?
What's that?
Do they
Yeah.
know?
At least in my classes, I always tell students at the start of the class, here's what you have access to, you're paying a fee to get access to this gear. I would say at other production programs, it's actually a pretty inexpensive way of going about it. Other students have to pay different ways.
And in years where we don't spend all the money, we gotta refund it?
No, because it goes into, Jody?
Yeah, we've been doing this for quite a long time. In fact, the practice probably predates the time that I was chair of the program. Published in the catalog, students always know going in, and it hasn't ever really been much of an issue for the students. In fact, it's kind of the opposite. They're actually appreciative of having the opportunity to see the equipment be kept up to date. A degree earned from an institution with obsolete equipment is probably worth less than most folks are willing to look at. So I really appreciate the question. I think you're absolutely right to be asking it. This is kind of a grandparented in practice that started, I think, well before many of us got here.
Just because we've always done it that way doesn't make it the right thing to do.
No, but that's correct, but it also isn't a new practice that's going to unduly burden a bunch of students in order to get this major.
It brings up a question, I don't know if it's in here, has there been any request from the institution for support for this, or is it all in, like down the backs of the students? Are they contributing? Because these kind of things are facility heavy, like equipment A lot of equipment is needed here and there.
Brandon,
So
can you talk a little bit about the budget of the DMC and how
Yeah, is the
this
institution
works?
supporting this in any way?
And I recognize that a lot of people aren't fully aware of our operation and the diversity of it. So the Digital Media Center, while not an academic department, since 2012, we have had the mission to make our priority academic support for a variety of programs, communication, emerging media, digital arts, increasingly arts. And so, that's classroom, checkout equipment, studio spaces, support spaces, and actually a lot of funding for the facility comes from services that we provide to the community via partnerships with the City of Memphis, City of Ashland, Jackson County, City of Grants Pass, Rogue Valley Transportation District, doing government programming. We hire between 10 and 20 students here, and they work to support some of that capacity. They're paid positions, a lot of them are professional development positions. And so, frankly, the course fees are, I don't want to call them a drop in the bucket, but every dime of that goes towards equipment that students use for academic purposes. And the remainder of the facility and resources like an audio booth or the studio space or the studio equipment is generally funded by other things that we provide in services to our community partners. The goal technologically is to stay at the forefront of the production equipment and media acquisition and creation equipment. And we do our level best, absolutely, with pride, to keep all of that as current as possible. And we have a unique opportunity to preserve some funding so that when we have technological shifts over 4 and 5 year periods, and when we have quite a bit of wear and tear on the gear, just general attrition,
No way to write grants to get some
we're able to overcome a lot of that. Grants for just gear are possible sometimes, but it's not very commonplace in the video and film equipment realm.
So I guess my question is, has the institution, not the center itself, but the Southern Oregon University, have they given any indication that they would contribute toward this major in terms of like the expense it might incur?
So again, to clarify, it's not going to incur any new expenses. We have an existing digital cinema concentration, and the number of courses we offer are very close to what's being proposed here. We already do the amount of production work that would be being done in this new program. And so all of the system we use will be the same system. This system is already in place. This is already how the equipment is funded. If the Senate does not approve, or at some other higher level this program doesn't go forward, we'll continue to offer the concentration and continue to do these production resources. So we are not asking the institution for any more funds because the system has worked and worked very well, and students seem to be happy with it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess on your behalf, I would suggest that you do, you know.
Actually, specifically to your question, since 2011,
Not
2012,
that it's a condition, but you know.
for
that
these
you-
programs, the school has at large added resources to that. In particular, in the funding of positions to staff the equipment checkout that offers access to that gear on a really regular basis. We try to have 40 or 50 hours a week, and so they set aside some funds to actually fund those student positions. And then in addition, an ongoing level of equipment funding for when we have really big shifts.
Yeah.
Perhaps also worth noting that OCA has some of the same challenges, but solves them in a different way. So they use the variable tuition option. So this is just a different way of kind of coming up with the same math to answer. some of the same
Yeah,
problems
except that
they
they got
have.
a revision of their facilities.
That was a capital project.
Yeah.
Different budget, yeah.
So, I mean, whatever contribution it is, I would say this might be worthy of some contribution. You know, from the university, if we're gonna have a very complex and enriched major it's a new major that is equipment intensive, that part of the proposal might be, well, we need an auxiliary building, or we need a new room, or we need new storage or something, so that it enhances the program rather than just like what Mark is saying, it's just about whatever student fees we can get.
Well,
I didn't exactly say.
Right. I wouldn't suggest that we're limping along by any means. I think we have, one of the reasons we're proposing a major is because the resources we already have rival Portland State. You know, our students are using state-of-the-art equipment. I mean, they're doing virtual reality productions and you know, 4K high definition production. I mean, we're by no means kind of scrounging around with what's available. This is. I mean, come to our student film festival in spring and see the quality of work our students are doing and have been doing for some time.
Okay.
I just want to add, as a outdoor visual leadership, we have student fees, and for programming outside the classroom, you have to have some kind of access to equipment, and you have to have a way to pay for this. No doubt, putting on extra student fees is a horrible thing, especially with all the tuition. A lot of things don't pay for tuition. But if we're going to give our students experiences outside the classroom, that is an avenue. And trust me, I am looking at ways to get things granted. I mean, I was just talking to the president of Black Diamond, like how do we get money? I did that in front of 1,000 people last week, in front of all those people, and say, you know what? We have this huge economy now. How come your money is not trickling down to us? And yeah, it was pretty fun. So we're out there, we're doing it, but it does take time and resources. In the meantime, we need to get our students out there. And one of the quickest ways to do this is through a student fee. I was looking at these. $90 seemed like a very small amount compared to what they're getting. I utilized the DMC. We utilized it last week. We needed to have some equipment. I ran down there and we put together a video. In my class, Adventure Writing Photography, and I needed gear, and I knew I could go down there and get the gear. And it was wonderful. So having that access, it's not just for digital cinema people, but it's also for us as well in outdoor visual leadership.
Just to throw that in,
Yeah.
Our chemistry majors use it as well, rent stuff. We have fees in our lab classes for breakage of glassware and reagents and whatnot, so I don't think it's something that's not happening on campus.
Mine was a different topic. If everyone wanted to say something about fees, let's chime in. Some people from my program wanted to ask a few of the more curricular questions. And so first, it's sort of a process question. I know this has already been approved by curriculum committee, right? And so that means that they went through all the new courses and approved those each separately and discussed them. Because I don't know how, I know it just got passed, right? Those people were on it. So I just wasn't sure how that discussion went and how those courses were just, the new courses in particular were discussed. And in my program, people were curious about the research and writing and how this version compares to what students in comm did before. And my overall question, coming more from me, was just, you've made it really clear that this is really following in the direction that's already laid, and that's why it's no new expenses for the university. So just for my own understanding, it would be helpful to know, so how is it different? Like, why is this a new proposal if it's just exactly what we already have? So it seems like it is a new proposal. So if you could just clarify what is new, so that we can kind of maybe focus on that.
So the things we focused on are, so the way the existing major works, there's a communication major with 3 concentrations. Right. We have comm studies, social media and public engagement, and digital cinema.
Right.
And so in each of those areas, students take the majority of their major in their focus. But there are a certain number of courses across the major that all students take. And so the digital cinema major has removed a number of those sort of cross-curricular comm courses with a deeper focus on production. Many of the courses that we already teach in one form or another as electives are now becoming required. So as an example, editing right now is not a required course in the concentration, but it would be a requirement for all majors. So a lot of those requirements are just coming from courses that we currently offer. We are adding a couple of additional courses responding to both advice from our advisory council and from what students have been asking for. So a new course on producing and a new course in cinematography. We've added a course in film history that we think all students should have. The other difference is that there are more credits. So the already digital cinema has more credits than the other two concentrations. Com has always been 68 until this year. We added digital cinema up to 72, and now this will take it up to 76. The biggest difference, and the one that my students are most clamoring for, is following OAL's leadership in this, is a 12-credit spring immersion in the junior year, in which all the juniors will work together on a production. And that's really the thing that sets it apart. It in fact sets it apart from any other film program that I can find, that these students will be working together on a professional type production for 12 credits in their junior year.
Okay, that's really helpful. So then about some of these new courses that are different from what was offered in COM. So one of them was 330B or 300B, is that it?
Yes. Yes.
So how is that different from COM 300?
So it's built, Chris might want to speak to this a little bit because he's going to be, he's teaching actually a 399 version of this year. Essentially, we built it on the skeleton of the current 300, but it has a creative focus, meaning the students, rather than doing a sort of picking a research topic and just doing a research project on that, their topic is based on a creative project they actually want to do. But Chris, you want to say a little more about that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think in a lot of ways it's really similar. It's still built around research and writing, but the focus of the writing is shifted away from a academic style paper and toward a kind of a creative brief or
Was
a
this
research
thing like an
proposal.
archive of visual stuff? Was that what was in the proposal? They could build an archive of visual things?
That's a possibility. My intention is, this will be in spring, we'll be sort of piloting this class, but the idea is to have a kind of a reason for them to get into doing research that is built around a concept that they've got for a creative project. So that may include doing visual research, but it may, and I would expect to also include more kind of traditional, maybe some historical research or academic research to find out what's been said about this, either this genre, if it's some kind of narrative project, or the topic, if it's a documentary or nonfiction. So and the idea is that...
But no paper for this class?
No, there will be a paper.
Like an actual research paper?
Yes.
Okay, because I thought it said something about a report.
Yeah, I mean, it'll not be an academic style research paper necessarily, although that will be an option for them, but it will be a written document that is using citation and kind of gives the background for their discoveries around this creative project.
Okay.
So one of the things we're trying to do is, with this program, is to get students doing academic practice, scholarly work, but within the context of a genre that is common in actual film practice. So preparing them to do the kind of research that a producer or a director or some other craftsperson might actually have to do in order to prepare a project. And Dale and I did a pilot of this with a screenwriting class. I taught, did a little mini version of this. So I don't know if Dale, you want to add anything about how that went?
Well, that was actually a kind of a neat thing to do with script writing. What we did is had students do research where you might not think, oh, I'm going to do a script, what do I need to research? And we did one on place and genre as the two research focal points. And so they had to, in place, like if you were going to do a detective story, then you had to do research of what a detective does, what does it look like in their office, you know, so you just wouldn't just whip something out of your memory about, you know, some film noir joking one. You would have a real thing there. And then the genre could be film noir, science fiction, or numerous different, even a documentary or something like that. And one of the things I will say on the COM 300, because it was somewhat of my question, that I was asking in there. One of the things that has been a little problematic in COM 300 in the past is that the video production students come into that class and their focus is radically different a lot of times. And so the databases that we would normally use for human communication, they still can function for the cinema, but you got to do a lot of other things, and sometimes you need to be over in the catalog and getting books on like film noir or something like that. And so that part's a little bit different, and it might be nice to have a focal point that's different on stuff.
So there will be classes where they write papers. Because I mean, I could easily see it for like a history of film class, but then I also noticed that those were the classes that are capped at 100. So that seemed less likely that they would be writing real researchy type papers on those. And those like film analysis and history of film, those are the big classes. And clearly in the production classes where it's so focused on skills and like this software and this camera, that doesn't make sense for them to write an academic paper because that's not what that class is about. So I just wanted to make sure that there's still going to be some research and writing going on.
And that's actually a real value of mine in this whole curriculum, and I'm very supportive. Even in film history, I think we should be writing. And it may not be the big research paper, but some kind of very focused paper. But one of my arguments for 300 really was that this gives us a way to encourage writing that's much closer to the kind of the goals and intentions of the students.
Because we are, at the same time, we're talking about revising general ed to lower those requirements and people spending more time in their major. And so if the major is really excising a lot of the academic writing, we just want to make sure the students are still getting that somewhere besides USAM.
Yeah, that's what important.
Any other questions? Yeah, Ryan?
I don't even know if this is the purview of Senate, but it looks like there were 16 classes that changed their prefix from COM then to DCIN by my account. And then there's 41 new credits that were offered when it was like new course is on one of the lists. It says this is a new course. Counted it up, I think it was 41 total credits. So the question that I had is, how will this impact COM, the Department of COM, if we're creating a whole new program and you were under COM, and if you're now the program director, or some of those lines, or I don't know, will then be teaching this new program, and then it seems like the ask of 14 ELU additional seems to be woefully not enough.
So to clarify, some of the new course proposals are replacing existing courses that are going away. So in certain cases, there's a course that takes the same role as what happens in the current curriculum, but we wanted to make enough of a substantial change to that course that due to the curricular process, it needed to be a new course proposal. So an example of that would be the entrepreneurial producing. That is taking the place of a course that's currently called location shooting for film. They aren't exactly 100% one-to-one connection, but there are connections such that we'll ask students who haven't taken that course on the current curriculum that would sub in.
What course is that used?
Entrepreneurial producing DCIN 340 is the proposal. So another example is DCIN 203 digital cinema production. That's replacing our current 215 plus 215R digital cinema foundation. So a lot of these are just plugging into the courses that are already there. There's actually only a little bit of new course content happening. There's the film history class, or the history cinema class, the cinematography class, and the crew experience are really the primary new things that are in there.
I mean, I see a bunch that say like new course, like visual storytelling.
But they're replacing existing courses that are going away.
But in this one, if something's replacing it, it says, for example, that one that you said before, that 340, it says formerly COM 15.
That's because those are literally the same course. So some are literally the same course, so they're getting a new course number or maybe even a new name, but others are new courses that are replacing an old course. Does that make sense?
Slightly, it's a bit confusing because it just sounded like there was a prefix change and there was some sort of curricular change, which therefore, I imagine that if that eliminates everything in the comm department, I was just wondering how this would impact comm studies and or comm, social media, interaction, immersion, concentration.
Eric wants to chime in about this from the chair's point of view.
Well, sure. I think there's a couple of things going on. One of which, to make it clear, we expect the academic unit to be basically unchanged. We're going to have a program in communication with the chair with, instead of 3 concentrations now, 2 concentrations and a separate major. So, so we're not really changing the structure of the program. We're not really changing our current kind of loading the demand situation. Obviously, we hope that there's enough growth that changes down the road, but we're just kind of shuffling things around a bit right now. And then in terms of how it impacts the rest of the curriculum, it basically doesn't. I mean, we've got a curriculum in communication studies, we've got a curriculum in social media and public engagement, we've got a curriculum in digital cinema. There's a couple of things where they're going to shift enrollments or demands a little bit here and there because there aren't some of the current comm courses won't have as many digital cinema students. Some of the current digital cinema courses might not have as many SMPE or comm studies students, but it should be a fairly marginal change overall. And we're projecting, and Andrew can probably remind me, but we're not projecting any new kind of full-time faculty hires for a ways out.
2 years.
Yeah.
If current growth is sustained, about 2 years.
Right.
I mean, I just know, at least in my department, if we try to have one new course, then somebody has to teach that course if we require it for the major, and then we're shuffling all around.
So again, part of this is because right now, Chris and I teach a lot of electives, and a lot of those will now be required courses. So a lot of what's happening is simply a shift of kind of what we're doing. It's not that we need to do more. And that's, you'll know, we also offer, we've played very well with our friends. We've included a lot of interdisciplinary elective options. So that also gives us, a release valve in terms of loading. If there's if it comes to be an issue where we have to offer a few less of the digital cinema electives because we're growing quickly, that won't be an obstacle for graduation for students because they have a lot of electives to choose from.
But they only take 12 credits of all those electives. That
right. Right. But I'm just saying, it's not as if we have to, we don't have to offer as many electives as we currently do. We're teaching, the majority of digital cinema courses that we currently do now are elective courses. They aren't required by anyone. But we offer them because students love them. And so, now those courses are going to be required.
But aren't they required for the concentration?
No.
No.
That's what I'm saying. There's the concentration. There are much fewer requirements in the concentration. They're pretty flexible. They take a lot of elective options, but right now we're basically taking a certain amount of flexibility out of it, saying you will take these courses. So editing is now required for everyone, whereas right now we offer it every year, and it fills every year, but it's not required. So it's kind of just changing what counts where.
Any other questions? Oh, Mark?
Go ahead, Bob.
No, I was pointing at you.
Oh, you're pointing at me.
Yeah, I didn't shake the hand, but see.
No, I couldn't do it.
Screenwriting and editing and lighting and stuff, why COM, not Oregon Center for the Arts?
Oh, why is the program in there?
Yeah.
So this was actually a rather lengthy discussion that happened in the provost's office, and obviously both Katie Pittman and David Humphrey weighed in on their thoughts about it. But there are a few reasons. I can give a quick anecdote about my past. I used to teach in an independent film program that was told that it had to join a larger school, another university. It joined the School of the Visual Arts for 4 years as a disaster, and it's now moved over into the School of Communication. Film is an interdisciplinary field. I mean, it touches on, it's organized in a lot of different ways at a lot of different universities. but it is a communication medium. Our current students, one where we obviously have to continue to teach out the current program, which this does, but we felt that that would be a great deal of confusion if suddenly it was in a different division with different processes. And there didn't really seem to be any reason to do that when our current program is still cohesive and works very well together. We continue to have faculty meetings together. And we think the students will continue to be served this way. So, and film is a business, and as well. So I think there's still alignment between what we do in communication and the rest of our division.
And if I can just add to that, if digital cinema had gone over to OCA, we would have instantly had to hire up additional capacity to teach the video and multimedia production skills that are relevant to social media and public engagement, especially our journalism students.
Yeah, so we'll continue to serve, this program will continue to serve some of, and you'll note in the proposal that Chris Lucas, who is primarily teaching digital cinema, is also teaching in some other comm areas right now.
And another thing too that was really important in our faculty for our communication discussion were that the students wanted to have film on their degree, having film as their major versus having communication and then explaining that they had a concentration with digital cinema. So that was something that we heard and we supported amongst the students, that they wanted to have that film as their major.
And kind of, you were talking about institutional support. Eric and I have been talking to the foundation about ways to fundraise for this program, and it's pretty clear that, for instance, there's been a donor who's been sort of interested, but he was interested if there was a major. So that's been an obstacle in finding sort of outside sources of funding. They want to know we're serious about it. So having a major, we already have a plan in place to go out and do fundraising in the community, and we do have an advisory council, and for those of you if you didn't look carefully at the advisory council list, that includes people statewide, including the governor, the executive director of the governor's office for film and television, who came down here in person and has been a big supporter of our program. So we really do have a lot of statewide interest in what we're doing.
I'll just back it up. Yeah, if you don't have something to bring to people, it's hard to say, oh yeah, we're going to have this. Once you say, yeah, we have this, and this is what we're doing, so you get a lot more excited about it.
I just have some overall comment, I support this kind of effort, and I think it's really, the department, the whole department should be congratulated for, their vision, and making something that's attractive to students. I guess I'm a little bit sad to see de-emphasis of journalism, and I was just wondering from a department chair point of view, this might be a significant departure away from something like that. Would that be accurate, or?
That's not accurate at all.
Yeah.
Our journalism is a growth area for us. It's not a fast growth area, but it is a growth area. We're seeing more and more interest from students.
That'd be good. That'd be good to hear. Yeah.
We are able to, sometimes it's a struggle, but we're able to staff and offer journalism courses moving forward. And we recently, we did not have a named program called journalism until I think it was 2 years ago. We re-added a digital journalism minor, and there's actually, again, not booming growth, but the students, when they see it, that are interested in it, are signing up for it. And let's just say not on my watch. We'll be doing journalism.
Yeah, I was wondering if it was you're adapting to the expertise of your faculty. When I was looking on the faculty website, most of the people had digital media experience, social media experience, and et cetera, but I didn't see so much journalism focus on the website, so I wasn't sure whether we were projecting that in a way that's a sign of the times.
Well, I think that, again, adding the digital journalism minor was, I think, an important step to make sure there's something called journalism that students can kind of wrap their heads around.
Yeah.
But definitely, you know, the strategy of the courses that we offer, especially in social media and public engagement and in digital journalism, they basically overlap, is for a program of our size, we have to serve multiple audiences with almost all the courses that we offer. And we do. So we teach, I teach a multimedia writing course that integrates both journalism and marketing writing. I teach a strategic social media course that speaks to both audiences. We have other courses that stretch to cover multiple audiences. And then, like I said, when we're able to staff and instruct a straight-on journalism course, we do. Chris is teaching one right now. Having an additional faculty member that can flex to do that is super important. And so, you know, the biggest challenge of journalism is getting the students to show up, but they are showing up. And we're also working on some initiatives to try to speak to students, especially in the English program.
On that note, you know, I mean, is there in this new curriculum digital cinema toward documentary, you know, documentaries, right?
Yeah, we have.
I thought I saw it, but I mean, like that seems to be a really good way that good journalism is coming on television, for example, on PBS and Frontline and stuff like that.
So we currently have 2 courses in documentary, and those will continue to be offered. We are in conversation. It's not a part of this proposal because we wanted to get this settled first, but we hope possibly as soon as next year to come forward with a, we've talked to a number of other programs to look at the possibility of a social justice documentary certificate, because there's a lot of interest on campus from other programs about students who are maybe majoring in completely different areas but really want to learn about documentary production. And so that's something that we see as a definite potential growth area. And right now, we, even beyond those 2 courses, of course, there are a number of students who like to work in documentary for their capstones, and we encourage that, for sure.
Good, thank you. That's good to hear.
Chris and I have both done some work in documentary, so definitely want to preserve that. One of our standing term-by-term faculty is a woman named Betsy McLean, who literally wrote the book on documentary. She's a pretty prominent documentary historian who, even though she's term by term, she's very committed and loves this program and keeps coming back.
Any other questions or comments? So you can take that back to your divisions, you can look in more detail now that you've heard more about it, and then maybe in 2 weeks we come back and vote or have more discussion.
And I just want to add one thing. You know, Mary Ann did reach out to me about a class that actually I think I knew about and somehow just got slipped off the radar. A French film course that I'm going to be amending this proposal with that. But again, I think we try to do a pretty good, thorough job of reaching out to other programs that had courses that we felt were related to the students. But if you know of something we missed, please let us know. We are not opposed to adding in a course somewhere. Particularly, actually, to music, we would love to have a film music course. If you know someone over there who want to create the course like that, we would love to have that in the future.
This is just a process question. So how does this, because this was already submitted to the HEC?
No.
Oh, okay.
So the process for a new program proposal is, it goes, you have to prepare all this documentation. It goes to the curriculum committee first, to us, then the board of trustees. It's actually the academic affairs
Academic and Student Affairs
committee of the board reviews it, and then they've been delegated the power to approve by the board. And then it goes, I think, basically simultaneously to the provost and HEC, or provost first?
Council, then HEC.
Provost, council, then HEC. But the HEC document is what, beyond SOU, what they look at. So we started with that. We built the entire thing around the HEC proposal because we wanted that locked up really in good shape. And so this has really been a discussion for about 3 years with the provost's office and discussion and feedback that they've given us, and we've gone back and done multiple drafts of this thing. And so Sue was on board with our proposal even before we sent it to curriculum committee. We wanted to make sure that Sue felt that she had an argument she could make to the provost council in that.
Yeah, we've actually added, partially because a lot of the discussion that we have to have about new programs happens at the state level to ensure that they're viable, they're sustainable, they're not going to be a problem for the other institutions, we're not going to be, you know, sucking market out of some other school, and that it's complementary. Even we don't have a system anymore, but we do have 7 institutions that work together as much as possible. So with that in mind, and for a couple of other reasons, there's usually an awful lot of pre-work that goes into starting to write a proposal, starting from, is this something that looks like it makes sense? We've actually created a pre-proposal proposal, which is kind of a declaration of intent that you can now find on the Provost website that just asks a couple of questions. You know, what will this program do? Why? You know, what resources might it need? And it kind of eliminates some of the problems that come up. You may remember some of our previous new academic programs raised a lot of conversation that might have been addressed a little earlier with some initial homework up front that doesn't bring it to bodies like this and take up a lot of time and anxiety. So that's new this year, and we think it'll be really helpful.
And I do know that the next meeting of the board is in January, and so if we are to propose, if we are to launch this program in fall as the communication hopes to do, it would need to be approved by Senate by the end of this term. So keep that in mind, that if you do have additional concerns or questions, we would love to hear them sooner than later.
Quick question, I'm not up to speed on this, but related to your talking about a film and music, where would the faculty, who would pay for that?
Yeah, I guess, you know, we talked to David Humphrey about this, and essentially, you know, he said that, you know, we'll see. He thought it'd be interesting if the music program were to offer a similar course along the lines of like the rock history or those kinds of courses in film music. That might be a course that would be a big seat filler for music that we would also require for our students and we go to OCA, I guess.
I could talk to him about it.
Yeah. Because I know we're not really in a position to offer a course in film music, but we would love to see one offered. And we've talked extensively about wanting to have more collaboration in music.
Good, okay, well.
All right. So that was a vigorous discussion. Moving along. Any announcements or new business?
I have 3 announcements. The OCA Theater program is opening Small Mouth Sounds this Thursday, November 1st, and it runs 2 weekends. Then we open the following week, on Thursday, November 8th, the grand musical Into the Woods. It is coinciding with the OCA Gala opening of the newly renovated theater and the new JPR building. And so look for Saturday, November 10th, big gala opening events from, I think, 10 or 11 in the morning until 2, and see the website for all of that.
Have 150 high school kids coming giving a concert in the music building that day too.
It's going to be a party.
Party.
Is that open to everyone?
Yeah, free.
Just want to say, the Outdoor Adventure Leadership Department, we took a road trip over to Snowboard last week and participated in the Adventure, the Association for Outdoor Recreation Education Conference. We made a big splash there, so we have, they're getting a snapshot of what is going on in the industry. And then we also went to the American Mountain Guide Association conference that was going at the same time. But it was fun to see our students out there making impressions, positive impressions, and coming back. And this is all about what kind of research they're going to do in their master's program. So great.
2 things. Do we just send you the names for the student task force evaluation?
Yes, send them to me and we'll discuss that. So if you could get them to me before next Monday, that would be
right
great.
now. I just didn't know if you want them written down or on on our.
Yeah, just email's fine.
All right.
Yeah, an email would be great, but yeah, we can obviously meet on next Monday, so it'd be great to have this.
And the other thing is, APSU is seeking nominations for the board, especially president-elect if anyone wants that job. FYI. And no, you cannot nominate me.
Any other announcements from new business?